I've never won before in Florida, no. I don't think I've ever led before a day. I finished second a few times. I had some top fives on this place even, but it's just been, it's been one of those places that hasn't been my strongest place. And it's just, I guess it's a mental thing more than anything, because so often you got to fish so slow to catch them here. And it's not in my nature. I just cannot force myself to do it. And if I'm not getting bit very often, I can't stay still. It's just who I am.
Kevin, you were real fired up this morning, along with everybody else, about how great it was going to be. I mean, you won, but it didn't really materialize like everybody thought.
What's up with that? It was as tough as it was out there. One of the things that probably slowed us down a little bit is I got to my first place, and about my fifth cast, I caught a good fish. And that first hour of the morning, where I was at, would have been real critical to be there. And unfortunately, as far as I had to run and then go through the lock, it was 2 hours after daylight before I make my first cast, and that probably slowed it down a little bit.
So what time was that you make your first cast?
Probably it's probably 9 o'clock.
Ray couldn't see much of the fish in 3 feet of water over here in Toho. Could you do any?
No, I was fishing out in the middle of the lake in 7 to 10 foot of water around scattered hydraulic clumps, and so I wasn't sight fishing at all. There's a lot of fish out there. They're moving around following bait. Occasionally you'd even see some schooling go on when it got calm. But it was just one of those things. You just had to work real hard, and when you got a bite, I mean, you had to be precise with your next cast right there. And I could go back to those same spots. Once I caught a fish, you drop a buoy or whatever, and you leave for a little while, and you come back, you catch another one. I mean, for some reason, they're holding, and that's the way it's always been here. I learned that a long time ago here, that if you catch a bass out of the hydrilla in the open lake, you better know that, and you mark that exact spot.
When you said the fish were moving around, can you elaborate what it was that was moving around?
Basically, I think it was wind direction and current. This is the first time in quite some time down here that there's been any water movement through the chain, that they're actually flowing water through the locks, and it creates a little bit of current throughout the whole lake. But the big thing that changes it is the wind direction. So what I really tried to concentrate on in the area that I was at was fishing edges and isolated clumps that had the wind blowing onto them. So it would kind of help position those fish. That wind would create some current, and I'd take my red-eye shad and just fire it out there and let it get in the grass, rip it free, and let it flutter down. I mean, the fish always bit it on the fall or on the paws while I was out there. You'd rip it out of the grass and let it flutter down, and they'd hit it. The key thing about that bait is it has a wiggle to it, or a shimmy, that no other lipless crankbait has, and it's a bait that I like to fish as a drop bait a lot for that reason. I caught several fish on canal points and by the lock with that, just doing that, casting out there 10, 12 foot of water, letting it sink to the bottom, ripping it up and letting it flutter down. It's every bite every big fish that I had this week came on that bait.
What was that big fish you had yesterday? What was the weight on it?
I had a 610 yesterday and an 810 the day before. So,
and well, like anything down here, those are what makes the difference.
Yeah, it really is. I really love to fish lipless crankbaits, and that red-eye shad is just a dynamite bait. It's something that I've got a lot of confidence in Florida, and I've spent a lot of time on my rod, reel, line, hook setup, because they're notorious for losing fish, and I'm real fortunate that I didn't lose any quality fish at all this week. I missed a few here and there. When I was dropping that bait, you'd have them kind of slap at it, but I never lost anything that I had hooked, and that was key, because I mean, if I'd lost one quality fish, I wouldn't be standing here right now. So, I've got a system that really works for me.
What is that system?
Well, in a nutshell, I use a Quantum 7-foot Energy PT. It's a composite cranking rod. It has a real fast tip to it, but it's fairly soft. So when I use that rod with fluorocarbon line, which has a lot less stretch in it, and it sinks, it helps keep the bait down, gives me a lot of sensitivity so I can feel when it's got any grass on it, so I can rip it free. And I was throwing it with 17-pound fluorocarbon, and The fluorocarbon that I use is Bass Pro's XPS. It's not that big a diameter line, so I can still keep the bait down deep, but that heavier line really helps me rip the bait through the grass and get a real good feel with it. And then I put extra short number two of them on that 1/2 ounce red eye shad, and those bigger hooks just really, when the bass gets locked onto that, they just don't hardly come off.